Did you know that 66% of Americans have been suffering from burnout from before the pandemic? And the World Health Organization declared burnout an occupational syndrome. Post-pandemic, those numbers have risen to 79%. We are in a burnout crisis. Now, each of you has a unique journey, and sometimes you encounter stress, but hopefully you can find a mentor to help you navigate that stress. Growing up down in Texas, my parents thought they were the only mentors that mattered. When it came time to choose a major for college, Mama declared, "A girl with a technical degree will always be able to land a job." She knew all about girls in tech because she was an executive recruiter in oil and gas. Watching her compete back then was a huge lesson for me, that I could do anything I wanted and I could compete in any world I wanted. She was the hardest worker I knew. I remember her sitting up in bed late at night, cutting out her ads from the newspaper and gluing them into her binders. And I knew she was trying to do her part in supporting the family. All of those messages had a profound effect on me. Senior year of college, I decided I'm moving to California, land of opportunity. I had heard that anything goes in California. And I'll never forget my poor father on the way to the airport. "Are you sure you want to move to Sin City where there's a bunch of dope smokers living on communes?" But I couldn't wait to get to San Francisco. I was burned out from living among people who judged you by your jewelry and your cars. And I was burned out from my helicopter parents who inserted themselves into every facet of our lives. While they were very domineering, they also did show us a lot of love. Every single Sunday, Daddy would pick us up from Sunday school and take us somewhere fun, bowling, horseback riding, and then we'd have a big old barbecue, because Daddy was a meat packer. On the other side of the coin, they could be so demanding. "That homework is messy. Start over. It's got to be perfect." "You're going out in that? Orange is not your color." "You made all A's last semester. Why aren't you making all A's this semester? Your brother makes all A's. Why aren't you making all A's?" And when you grow up in a home like that with all those passive-aggressive messages, you begin to develop what we call limiting beliefs. And those limiting beliefs get translated to, "I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough." You are smart enough, you are pretty enough, you are good enough. Have you ever felt these feelings or had a critical person in your life, be it mama or daddy, a boss or a coworker, who was always criticizing and not supporting your dreams? And so, armed with my math degree, I landed in San Francisco with my new job, computer programmer for Bank of America. Mama and Daddy were so proud. You would have thought I was the queen of San Francisco. But back in those days, there was no mentoring. There were no affinity groups for women or minorities. I even remember my first interview with Tony, the VP. "Aren't you going to want to quit in a couple of years so you can get married and raise a family?" There were no gender discrimination rules in hiring. And all of these conditions led to a stressful work environment where women and minorities were hitting the glass ceiling and not earning equitable pay. But in spite of these obstacles, I was successful. But I realized after a while that I was living Mama and Daddy's dream, not my dream. And that's one of the biggest stressors, isn't it? Living other people's dreams. And so I asked myself, what do I really want to do? What do I love? And that was dancing. I had been dancing my whole life. And dancing made me so happy that I wanted to be a professional dancer. That was my lifelong dream. And so after 4 years, I packed my bags and moved to LA. Daddy had a lot to say that day. You owe it to me to live a normal life. But loaded with determination, now I was a professional dancer with a math degree. I landed a few gigs, but after 2 years of living the starving artist life, I decided to return to San Francisco to find a new and different kind of tech job, one more suited to me and my skills. And soon I found the perfect job, software consultant, where I got to go out and talk to people. And that's what I loved doing, talking to people. If only all my teachers in school who gave me D's in conduct could have known that talking was a skill. So figure out what you really love to do and carve out a career in it. There at my software consulting job, I found the world's best boss, Frank. Frank taught me so many lessons and saw in me talents that I didn't even know were there. For example, after a few months of consulting, he came to me one day and said, "I think you should be the trainer for our division." Sounded interesting and fun, so I said yes. I decided to take a chance. And I took to training like a duck to water. Now I was the software expert, and I felt validated by my boss. I had a lot of respect for him, and I was so happy working for him. For you leaders and managers, one of the keys to preventing burnout for your teams is to help them discover the work that they can excel at. I loved standing in front of groups, teaching people about software, helping them get the most out of their software, and assuaging their fears about computers. And I loved the challenge. After all, Mama told me to find a tech job. It was just a matter of finding the right tech job. And interestingly, that opportunity led to where I am today, helping groups learn how to banish burnout from their lives. Who knew that Frank would light a spark in me that I didn't even know was there and would impact me years later? Leaders, do you see how cultivating your managers to be mentors can help your teams be their best? Another way that Frank supported me was that he always had my back, especially in difficult situations. For example, I had a really difficult client, a very large shipping vendor. They were the largest client in our company. And they would call screaming, my data, like the house was on fire. And Frank taught me a very valuable set of tools. Listen intently, acknowledge what they're saying, help them calm down, and then move them to the solution. I needed to help them manage their stress so they wouldn't create more stress for me. And I remember going into his office. It's them again. He would respond, okay, what is your plan? I said, step A, step B, step C. He said, that's perfect. And don't forget step D. Now, step D might have been the most important part of the solution, but Frank always made me feel that I could think for myself and make my own decisions. And in this way, Frank taught me to be self-sufficient and solve my own problems, and that I didn't need to stress out because my client was stressing out. He also taught me to stand up for myself and control the narrative. What a wonderful friend and mentor Frank was to me. He mentored me by seeing in me talents that I didn't even know were there. He mentored me by teaching me how to think for myself, and he mentored me by showing me how to set healthy boundaries. And in all these ways, he mentored me to banish my burnout. Finally, Frank gave me a really critical gift. Years later, after he had moved on and I had moved on to start my own consulting business, he called one day and said, can you find me a DB2 DBA? I didn't know what a DB2 DBA was or anything about recruiting. but I had remembered Mama and all her ads from the newspaper. And so I said, sure, I can do it. And I placed an ad in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I closed the deal. Here's the thing, I never planned to become a recruiter, but I responded when opportunity knocked. And I went on to recruit for 20 years, thanks to Frank and his excellent mentoring. No matter what you study in college, your career can take on so many different forms. And more important, you can be open to new opportunities when they come knocking. Choosing your path is one of the most important keys to preventing burnout. And for you managers, grooming your employees and supporting them builds loyalty and trust, so they won't want to leave. So I went along happily recruiting for, as I said, 20 years until 2008, the year of the big economic meltdown. There were no jobs, so there was no recruiting. This was the first time in my life that I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I did know I was out of shape. So I joined a gym, and there I found Zumba fitness. And soon I became a Zumba fitness instructor. And I loved all the music and the hot Latin dances. And what I learned from leading Zumba classes is that I was in a position to help people love fitness by making exercise fun. One day I wondered, how can I apply my love of fitness to the workplace? And so I decided to go back to one of my true loves that Frank had inspired in me, and that was speaking to groups. So I went around to organizations giving workplace wellness talks. One day, another opportunity knocked. A client called and said, we want you to do a talk about stress, but we don't want mindfulness or meditation. We want you to go deep. Interestingly, I had already been researching the psychology of stress, and I created my Banish Burnout program, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've helped hundreds of company leaders and managers learn how to prevent burnout for themselves and their teams. And these days, post-pandemic, burnout is more prevalent than ever. We are in a burnout crisis. And not only are the workers suffering, but so is the bottom line, because burned out workers cannot be their best, and then they leave, and they leave a hole in the productivity matrix. And I have learned that no matter what is causing the burnout, the reaction is the same, overreaction. The stressor is over here. Our reaction is over here. The problem comes when we allow the stressor to control us. We carry stress around with us wherever we go, and it impacts every facet of our life, our work life and our home life. But here's the thing, no one truly wants you to burn out. Sometimes leaders and managers need help understanding where you're at. They can't read your mind. Sometimes it's up to you to let them know where your boundaries are. And for you managers, it's up to you to watch for the burnout cues from your team. Spend time with them, ask them how they're doing, and then listen. Ask what you can do to help them succeed. Look for opportunities to make them shine. Be their mentor. We call this emotional intelligence. Be a Frank, a manager no one wants to leave. And remember, you cannot take care of your work, your team, or your family if you do not take care of yourself. Thank you very much.